Hi everyone. For this month's virtual Coffee With, I'm pleased to introduce Viv Cunningham-Smith, the CEO of Eastern Volunteers, who we're also very fortunate to have as our chair of the Unareast PCP board. Welcome, Viv. And the big question first up, thank you, is coffee, tea or other?
Oh no, mine's a chai almond latte. I don't have one with me at the moment because I've just rushed from a meeting, but it's definitely a chai almond latte.
Well, cheers. I'm strobing a bit there. We will have one together soon, hopefully in reality. Before we start, I'm going to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the lands we meet, the Wurundjeri people, and I'd like to pay my respects on behalf of both of us to elders past, present and emerging. Our guest, Viv, has 30 years experience in primary health, early years, child and family and community sectors in New South Wales and Victoria, and 25 of these have been spent in executive management. Viv is a passionate leader with strengths in strategy, governance, advocacy and social outcomes. She has warmth, drive, a great sense of humour, a social worker at heart, and she's a devoted animal lover.
Oh, yes.
So Viv, our first question is, can you give us a snapshot of Eastern Volunteers and what you see as the benefits of volunteering, and why should the government champion it?
EV has two parts to it. The first being community transport. And community transport is a form of transport for what we call transport vulnerable people. So people who can no longer use their own cars, they don't have family to transport them, they don't use and can't use public transport or rideshare or taxis. And a lot of the people we do transport don't feel safe in those. So they look to community transport, which is the form of transport just before patient transport that takes people who are over 65 or people under 65 who experience barriers to accessing services. We take them to social, recreational and health related activities. So 2/3 of the people we transport are just having coffee with friends. They might be shopping, doing the normal daily stuff that everybody does. And our community transport allows people to stay at home, healthy, well, and get the services and activities that they need. We have a fleet of 12 cars, all driven by volunteers. We have a logistics team that coordinates all of those trips. And pre-COVID, we were putting about 135 trips a day on the road. So we transport about 2,000 people a year.
Wow.
And that takes, and for me, thinking about how people get to services has become second nature to me. But one of the challenges for us is getting others, like particularly health sector people, to go, well, how did my client get to me today? And why are they not getting to me? Do they have transport vulnerability? Because not a lot of people think that. So we do also a lot of work in trying to raise people's awareness of transport vulnerability, and get them to send clients to us because we are able to respond. The other major part that we do is in our name, volunteering. So we run the Eastern Volunteer Support Organisation, also called a resource centre, also called a support service. And it also has two parts to it. The first being that we support organisations, community organisations, a lot of small to medium sized ones who require volunteer workforces. And we support them through training, through mentoring, through advice on how to structure their workforces. And we also assist them to adapt to how people want to volunteer, which is a changing and evolving space. We also assist people into volunteering. So we have assessor teams who will work with people who want to volunteer in their community and try and find the right meaningful volunteering role for them. And a lot of the people that we do that work for have a level of vulnerability and barriers to participating in community. So, you know, people with language and cultural barriers, maybe disability, mental health barriers. Why should we continue to do that? Well, the Commonwealth Government, unfortunately, has just defunded all volunteer resource services across Australia as at June. The state government, through its Victorian volunteer strategy, is absolutely committed to keeping place-based volunteering through volunteer support organisations, but their money is not going to roll out until 2022. So we're in this precarious situation at the moment where in Victoria, we've got this 12 months where we might lose our infrastructure for volunteering. And so Eastern Volunteers does a lot of advocacy work in that area to ensure that the volunteering infrastructure that we have is maintained, because volunteering has enormous economic benefits, it has enormous social benefits, and the most recent report on the state of volunteering in Victoria quantifies all of that. And if people are interested, I'd say go and have a look at the report. But volunteering is good for the soul. It's good for the individual. It's good for the community. And it's not only the economic benefit that the community gets out of it, it is the benefit for the people who volunteer, who maintain their connection to community, who maintain their well-being from volunteering. But volunteering is also a fabulous employment pathway, and one that's really, really underdone. You know, volunteering as an employment pathway gives you the networks and connections you need to build your confidence, to go and find work. And in fact, many of the job networks refer people to us without the funding, but they refer people to us to put them into volunteering because it is such an effective pathway. And it also gives people a chance to try out. You know, when I was 16, I wanted to be a veterinarian. I'd be a shocking vet because I'd cry every time an animal came through the door. You know, it gives you a chance to test all of that out. And volunteering is also a workforce that delivers services. And increasingly, as the community and social sector funding diminishes, you know, a lot of the services that 20, 30 years ago were provided by paid staff are now provided by volunteer workforces. And one of the things that really I get on my high horse about is that executives and management in these organisations using volunteer workforces don't see that they're a workforce. They're a gap filler. Great, I can get stuff happening over here, but I don't need to worry about that volunteer workforce. So they lose a whole lot of strategic opportunity there, because you've got to integrate your volunteer workforce with your paid workforce. So we also do a lot of advocacy and support of people thinking about how you take how you make the most of your volunteer workforces.
Mm. Well, it sounds like an incredible asset with a lot of potential, a lot of untapped potential, and you've convinced me you're absolutely a connector of people, and particularly vulnerable people, into some really vital services and some vital pathways.
Absolutely.
You can see the passion in your voice, Viv, when you talk about your service. So tell me a little bit more about what excites and motivates you as a CEO and a leader in the region.
There's lots of things that do that, but primarily it is the outcomes for people involved in services. And I'm a community development worker at my core. That's what I've done for 30 odd years. So being able to support a vibrant community sector that has small, medium and large organisations, delivering a full range of services to the community is been my passion for 30 years. And so, excuse me a minute, you know, Eastern, the work we're doing here at Eastern is perfectly consistent with that. We are delivering volunteer workforces into community, and we did it in a big way last year. You know, we redeployed volunteers to keep community organisations open last year. Otherwise, you know, and replace old volunteers, or volunteers who are older and over 65. That work really inspires me because I come from the not-for-profit sector. I am in the not-for-profit sector, and I want to see those services being delivered to my grandchildren, you know, in a quality way. The other thing I think that really inspires me is the capacity for change and innovation in our sector. And you know, I love to promote innovation. I love to promote thinking about the way we deliver services, how we achieve outcomes for communities, think about it differently. I love supporting new thinking in that area. You know, I'm on the back end of my career. I love to support and mentor younger people, younger professionals coming through, to ensure that our social structures remain sensitive to community. And so advocacy is something that comes quite naturally to me, probably much to some people's chagrin, but it does come naturally, and I really enjoy actually trying to advocate for change. And where change occurs, that's great, but you know, the passion for advocacy is there. And we advocate as Eastern Volunteers on a whole range of issues that impact people's lives. You know, and I don't advocate for advocacy's sake. It's about the impact that we have, that the sector has on people's lives. That's what really keeps me getting up in the morning, saying hi to my cats and coming in here. And my God, yeah.
Right. Viv, you mentioned, you know, change and, you know, and last year, and, you know, I guess it's been, you know, an unprecedented year. How has Eastern Volunteers survived or thrived and been transformed through the pandemic?
We turned ourselves inside out and upside down in March of last year. So we kept on delivering our services. So in community transport, pretty much overnight, we lost 3/4 of our drivers. They were replaced by Caledenia Dementia Care Service. It had to close its doors, came to our volunteer support part of our organisation and said, here's a workforce. And we went, thank you. That'll keep our community transport going. So we transformed what we did. We offered shopping, we offered medication pickups. We pretty much within 2 weeks did 1,400 COVID case plans through each of our clients. We introduced welfare checks. So the whole nature of the community transport business changed. We kept people attending necessary health services, but we expanded to make sure all of our clients remained healthy and well during that period. In the VRS, we shut overnight, we went remote, and luckily for us, the work that our corporate services manager, Charles Cox, did in introducing new IT platforms worked for us. Like, he hadn't quite introduced us all to the new IT platforms. He got it all in place and got it idiot-proof for most of us. But then overnight, we actually had to use it. And we found out that we actually weren't quite the idiots we thought we were in that. And so we were able to pretty much overnight just work remotely and flexibly. And, you know, that's one of the things that we do at Eastern is we are very agile and we are very flexible in our culture. So that allowed the teams to kind of, do the COVID stuff much more easily. But in volunteering, we set up a volunteer COVID bank. Now, pretty much immediately, there was about 400 people who went, yep, I want to volunteer in COVID. And my teams were redeploying them to a range of community organisations. So there are animal welfare organisations. Volunteers went in and did virtual checks of homes for potential foster carers, because we were expecting people to give up their animals. I think, in fact, the absolute opposite happened, but, people were preparing back then. We put a lot of volunteers into material aid agencies, kept the food going, into food delivery services. So whoever needed volunteers, we were deploying. And at the real height of that stage 4 lockdown, we had 1,000 people in the COVID bank that we were deploying out to community organisations. So, I talk about us as being the backbone of community organisations last year, to keep their doors open and to, because all of us who relied on volunteers over 65 were impacted last year. And that work's continuing, helping organisations in COVID recovery, helping them to think differently about how their volunteer workforces come back, because people who are under 65 or even under 55 are not going to do traditional volunteering. They're not going to be the 1 day a week for the next 10 years volunteer. And organisations have to think differently about who they're attracting, how they're attracting, because younger people want project-based volunteering, skill volunteering, and we do a lot of work in that area. So COVID turned us upside down, inside out, and we kind of innovated and kept some of that we'll keep some of that innovation.
Wow. Well, a busy year and a busy service, Viv. You deserve a break. Once the travel bubble opens up a bit more broadly, have you got any thoughts about where you might like to go and escape to for some R&R?
Absolutely. I had my 60th birthday planned last September in Paris. And we had a family holiday plan, and it went west as well. So I'm now 59 permanently until I go to Paris and have my 60th birthday. So that's where I'm heading as soon as I am able to.
Yeah, sounds wonderful, Viv. And yes, I'd like to do that too at some point and revisit it again. Amazing city. And an amazing interview, Viv, really insightful about you and your organisation. So thank you so much for joining us. It's been a real pleasure, and I look forward to further chats on the board.
Absolutely. Here's cheers.
And to you. Thanks, Viv. Ciao.
Bye.